I'm in my development machine. Before we start building the pipeline, let's first explore the application that we are going to build. We are going to build a very simple ASP.NET Core MVC application, and we are going to containerize that application using Linux containers. So let's first explore that application. Open Visual Studio Code, go to Files, and open the folder under C Div. There's a project given for you called My Wolf App. So select that folder and then open it. So if you go into My Wolf App, you can find that it's a very simple ASP.NET Core web application. You have the Docker file that describes what kind of application to build. Because this Docker file is made of Microsoft .NET 2.2 ASP.NET Core runtime, which is a Linux container, you cannot build the container on the Windows machine. However, we can still run this application as a ASP.NET Core web application on the local host. So what we are going to do is to first explore how this application looks like by running it as a local website. And then at later stage, we are going to containerize this one by building this application on Linux containers using a Linux built agent. So to first get a look and feel of how this application feels like, let's go to the debug section, and under the drop down, select .NET Core Launch Web Application. You cannot launch it as a Docker container because this container is a Linux container. So let's run this one as a .NET Core web application, and then click this Start Debug button, which will build the application, and then it's going to launch a local website. So here you can find that it's a very simple ASP.NET Core web application. So right now it prints the message, welcome to Fargate My Wolf App version 1.0. We are going to run this one in a Fargate cluster, and that's why you have this message. The container ID right now it's printing as the div, which is the host name. But later when we are running this one in a containerized environment, this container ID will be the correct container ID. If you go into the test page, it's just printing the current time, so you can check whether the website is working. So right now this is a simple ASP.NET Core web application that we are going to containerize and then automatically deployed into a Fargate cluster. So let's see how we can do that. So if you go into your Explorer and then go to the views, and in the index.html file, so that's the home page, you can find the message that I'm printing into the screen. You can also find the container ID is coming from this model host ID, and this is coming from this controller. If you look at this home controller, you can find that model host ID is coming from the system environment machine name. So right now it's printing development or div, because the machine name of this development machine is div. But when you run it in container environment, containerized environment, that will be the container ID. So what we are going to do is to go to this index.html file, and instead of saying welcome to Fargate My Wolf App, we are going to say welcome to Fargate Wolf App version 2. So commit it, and then commit these changes, change the message, save it, and then push that changes into the Azure repository. So like before, this is linked, this Git repository is linked to Azure repositories. So if you go into your Azure DevOps, there's a project called My Wolf App. And if you go into My Wolf App and go to the repositories, and under the files, you should be able to see under views, home, index.html, whatever the changes that you have published here. So I have my changes in the repository. So the next step is to go there and then build the pipeline. So if I go into my pipelines and then edit my Wolf app ASP.NET Core CI or continuous integration pipeline. To build this, it needs to have a build agent capable of building Docker containers. So you have some things like build Docker images, where I'm going to execute Docker commands called docker build t and then give the version that I want to release. So to execute this one, I need to have a build agent capable of building this. But as of now, I don't have such a build agent. If we go into Azure DevOps and under admin settings, if you select agent pools, you can find that we already have this AWS build pool, and in that we have AWS build agent 1, which we discussed in our previous labs. Now this build agent is a Windows machine with Windows build agent installed. It cannot build Linux containers. So to do that, if you explore this AWS build pool Linux agent pool, we have AWS build agent Linux-1. So currently it's offline. So what we are going to do is to start this instance, which in that case this will turn to green, and then we are ready to execute our pipeline on top of this build agent. Let's start our Linux build agent. Go to your EC2 section of the console. Go to instances. We already have our dev and build machine. Launch a new instance. Select my Amazon machine images and select shared with me. It's very important that you select this checkbox, shared with me. And then you will find an image called DevOps build machine Linux dash some version number. So time to time we will update this version number. So you will find the image name as DevOps build machine Linux. So select that. Select an instance size of something like T2 medium. Go to configure instance details. The network you're going to launch this is DevOps VPC like before. Let's launch it in the public subnet 2. You need to assign an IAM role. Later we are going to grant permission for the pipeline through this IAM role. So select the IAM role called DevOps build Linux role. So this role is already provisioned for you as part of the lab setup. Keep all these things as default. Click add storage. Make it about 20 gigabyte. We are going to build some images on this machine. So time to time it will take some space of the storage. So keep it around 20 gigabyte. Click add tags. Click configure security groups. Select an existing security group and then select DevOps build machine Linux security group. So it allows RDP and SSH access. Click review and then finally launch. So proceed without a key pair. You don't want to have a key pair for this. This image is already baked, has a baked in username and a password. So acknowledge this checkbox and then launch the instance. And go to view instance. Mark this newly created build machine as build Linux machine. So you know that it's the build machine. So this one is a Windows machine that has the build agent installed. So this is our EC2 instance we just started with a Linux build agent. After a few minutes, my build Linux machine has passes all the status checks. Let's go into Azure DevOps server and then checks whether this build machine is recognized as one of the agent. So go to your Azure DevOps server. Like before, go to admin settings, then build pools. Under AWS build pool for Linux, you can find that AWS build agent Linux-1 is green and it's enabled. So what we are going to do next is to execute the pipeline and then explore how we are going to get this container working on a Fargate cluster. Back in Azure DevOps, I go into my Wolf app, go to the pipelines, and then edit the pipeline. And you can find some steps that we execute to build this application and publish that application into Amazon Elastic Container Registry. So like before, it's executing a .NET restoration, which is going to look up for this C# project file, get the NuGet packages, build the solution. If you have some test assemblies, it's going to test them, and then publish these artifacts as a zip file into the build artifact staging directory. It's going to build some Docker image. So let's see whether this pipeline works up to this state, because we already have our build agent configured for this pipeline. These steps, of course, is going to fail because we haven't configured our Amazon ECR repository and our ECS services. But it's okay to execute this pipeline and then see what happens. So select AWS build pool Linux agent pool, and then queue a new build. So it has started a new build. You can go to that build from here. And now it's executing these steps. If your build agent is working correctly, you should be able to see some of the steps getting executed. Checkout is successful. Restoration is in the progress. So this tells my build agent that I just started is working fine. You can find that they are all Linux path. So now it's restoring the NuGet packages. It's building the application. You can find that the build agent is configured under home Ubuntu folder, build agent folder. And now it's building the Docker images. If it doesn't have the base layers, it's going to download these images. So this build agent has to have access to a repository that has these base layers. So if you already have those layers, it's not going to download it. And now it's trying to publish to Amazon ECR. Of course, it fails, partly because we don't have that repository created yet. And also this build agent does not have permissions to publish it. So what we are going to do in the next step is to create the Amazon ECR repository and then configure this task to publish the image into the repository. So let's see how we can do that.